The most dangerous thing you will ever do is try to reason with a fool you've already lost. Before you even opened your mouth, before you found the perfect argument, before you lined up every fact, you had already lost. And the worst part is you're the smart one in the room. So how does that happen? How does a man with a sharper mind, more knowledge, more logic, walk away from a conversation feeling drained, humiliated, invisible, while the fool, the loud, confident, wrong fool, walks away feeling like he just won? Schopenhauer knew why, and what he discovered is something they will never teach you in school, something no motivational speaker will ever tell you, something that once you understand it will permanently change how you move through this world. Stay here, because what you're about to hear is not advice, it is a weapon. The intelligence trap. You are intelligent, and that intelligence is killing you. Not in the obvious way, not in the way weakness kills a man, in a quieter way, a more expensive way. Every day you are surrounded by people who are louder than they are right, people who argue with more passion than knowledge, people who are wrong, boldly, publicly, completely wrong, and yet somehow they are winning. They get the promotion, they win the argument at the table, they speak and people nod, they are believed, they are followed, and you sit there, silent, because you know the full complexity of the situation, you understand the nuance, you see what they cannot see, and instead of being rewarded for that clarity, you are dismissed. That is the trap, the intelligence trap, and almost every smart man falls into it. Here is what Schopenhauer observed. A philosopher who spent his life dissecting human nature, who watched the world with cold, surgical precision, he said this: talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. But what happens when you are surrounded by people who aren't even looking at the target? What happens when the man next to you isn't interested in truth, isn't interested in logic, isn't interested in being correct? He is only interested in winning. And that is a different game entirely. You were playing chess. He was flipping the board, and you, the intelligent one, spent your energy explaining the rules of chess to someone who never agreed to play. That is not a debate. That is bleeding. You have been bleeding. Every argument you tried to win with logic, every time you corrected someone in public, every time you expected reason from someone incapable of reason, you bled. Mental energy, emotional energy, time. You gave it freely to people who did not deserve it, to people who used it against you. And here is the brutal truth Schopenhauer laid bare. Most people do not argue to discover truth. They argue to feel dominant. They argue to feel seen, to feel that they exist, that their opinion matters. Logic was never the point. So every time you brought a fact, they brought an emotion. Every time you built a case, they built a wall. Every time you tried to elevate the conversation, they dragged it back down to the level they understand, their level. And at their level, they are undefeatable. Philosophy Introduction. Dunning-Kruger and the Illusion of Knowing. There is a phenomenon, a psychological phenomenon so common, so perfectly woven into human nature that you encounter it every single day, and yet most men never name it. It is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Here's what it means. The less a person knows about something, the more confident they are. Think about that. The man who has read 3 articles on economics argues louder than the man who has studied it for 10 years. The man who has never left his city lectures the world traveler about how the world works. The man who has never built anything tells the architect what is possible. And the truly painful part, the truly maddening part, the ignorant man is not lying. He genuinely believes he is right. He has no awareness of what he does not know. He cannot see the gap, because you need knowledge to recognize the boundaries of your knowledge, and he does not have it. Schopenhauer described a similar principle. He said most human beings operate like machines, driven by impulse, habit, desire. Rational thought is rare. True rational thought, the kind that challenges what you already believe, is almost extinct. So when you sit across from this man, this confident, loud, wrong man, and you try to reason with him, you are not engaging a mind. You are engaging a wall. And walls do not move because you explain things to them. This is the first truth you must absorb. Not all minds are equal. That is not arrogance. That is observation. That is Schopenhauer. That is reality. Tactical framework. System 1 versus System 2. There are 2 systems inside every human mind. Daniel Kahneman named them, but Schopenhauer understood them centuries before they had names. System 1 is fast, automatic, emotional, reactive. It sees a dog and feels fear. It hears an insult and feels rage. It encounters an opposing opinion and feels threatened. System 2 is slow, deliberate, logical, costly. It takes effort. It takes stillness. It requires you to pause, breathe, and think before you respond. Most people live entirely in System 1. They react before they think. They feel before they understand. They speak before they know. You, the man watching this, you have more access to System 2 than most. That is why you are here. That is why this content reaches you. That is why you feel frustrated by people who seem to operate on pure instinct. But here is what you must understand. When you enter a debate with a System 1 thinker, you activate your System 2, and they escalate their System 1. You get calmer, they get louder, you get more rational, they get more emotional, you build logic, they build pressure. And in a crowd, in a room, in front of an audience, emotion wins. Always. Emotion is louder, emotion is more visible, emotion moves people. And the fool knows this, not consciously but instinctively. He knows that if he performs emotion with enough intensity, the crowd will follow him. So you must stop fighting his battle. You must stop entering arenas you were never meant to fight in. Strategy phase. The art of disengagement. Schopenhauer wrote a book called The Art of Being Right. In it, he cataloged 38 strategies that humans use, not to find truth, but to win arguments. He was not teaching you to use them. He was showing you how they are used against you. Strategies like shifting the goalposts when losing, attacking the person instead of the argument, repeating a false claim louder until it sounds like fact. These are not logic, these are weapons. And when someone deploys these weapons, the intelligent man makes a fatal mistake. He tries to dismantle them, logically, calmly, with evidence, and in doing so, he gives them exactly what they want: attention, energy, reaction. Fools feed on reaction. They do not need to be right. They need you to be affected. The moment your voice rises, the moment your eyes harden, the moment they can see that their words reached you, they have won. Not the argument, you. They won you. So what do the truly intelligent do? They do something that looks like weakness, but is in fact the most devastating form of power. They disengage, not with anger, not with visible frustration, not with dramatic silence that communicates contempt, though that is tempting, with something colder, with genuine indifference. And here is the first strategy Schopenhauer would endorse: agree, completely, absurdly. When a fool makes a foolish point, do not argue. Agree. Agree with full sincerity. Agree with such complete acceptance that the conversation has nowhere to go. You're absolutely right. Watch what happens. He prepared for resistance. He sharpened his arguments to cut through your logic, but you gave him nothing to cut. He wanted a wall. You became air, and a man cannot fight air. His aggression, his readiness, his need for conflict has no target. It collapses inward. And you have spent zero energy. You have revealed nothing. You have given him no information about how you truly think. You have simply moved on. The second strategy: reframe, redirect, disappear. You do not explain your position. You do not defend your intelligence. You do not need him to understand you. You ask a question, a simple question, seemingly innocent, but strategically placed. That's interesting. What made you think of it that way? Now he is talking about himself. Now he is performing for you. Now he is in the spotlight, which is exactly where he wants to be. And you are observing, quiet, calculating, learning. While he believes he is winning, you are mapping him. You are learning his weaknesses, his insecurities, his blind spots, the pressure points he does not know he is revealing. Because here is what Schopenhauer understood about human nature. Every man shows you exactly who he is when he believes no one is watching closely. And they never think you are watching closely because you appear distracted, you appear uninterested, you appear dismissive, which is exactly the mask you should wear. The avatar. Never let them touch the real you. There is a concept that the most strategically intelligent men have always understood. You do not bring yourself to every interaction. You bring a version of yourself, an avatar, a mask, a face designed for the environment you are entering. Think of it this way: when a doctor enters a room with a difficult patient, he does not bring his ego, he does not bring his frustration, he does not bring his private opinions about the patient's choices. He brings his professional mask, calm, controlled, separate. You must do the same. When you are forced to interact with someone whose thinking is beneath your level, do not bring your real mind to the encounter. Bring the avatar, the version of you that is pleasant enough to avoid conflict, agreeable enough to seem harmless, present enough to seem engaged, but never, never fully there. Your real mind is somewhere else, thinking, planning, protecting itself. Because here is what happens when intelligent men engage foolish people without this protection. They get contaminated. That word is deliberate. Contaminated. You spend enough time arguing with irrational thinkers, and you start to adopt their patterns. You start reacting. You start repeating yourself. You start raising your voice. You start needing to be right out loud. And one day, you look in the mirror, and you see something of them in you. That is the real danger of prolonged exposure to stupidity. Not that it defeats you, that it shapes you. Schopenhauer himself withdrew from society, lived in isolation, avoided unnecessary human contact, not because he hated people, but because he understood the cost of being around the wrong ones. He understood that the mind is a limited resource. Energy spent on fools is energy not spent on building, not spent on creating, not spent on becoming. Every pointless argument you've had, that was hours of your life. Gone. Not because you spent them poorly, but because you spent them on someone who took them. Escalation. When fools hold power, there is a more dangerous situation. What happens when the fool is not just a stranger, not just a coworker or a social media comment? What happens when the fool has power over you? A boss who is less intelligent than you, a superior who makes decisions based on ego, a person in authority who mistakes loudness for leadership and incompetence for confidence. This is where many intelligent men break, because now the stakes are real. Now disengagement alone is not enough. Now you cannot simply agree and walk away. You must survive. And survival requires a different kind of intelligence. History has a name for this intelligence. It belongs to a man named Sima Yi, a general in ancient China, one of the most strategically brilliant military minds of his era. He served under an emperor, a paranoid, suspicious ruler who feared brilliant men. Sima Yi was more intelligent than the emperor. Everyone knew it. The emperor knew it, and that made him dangerous. So what did Sima Yi do? He pretended to be sick. For years, he appeared weak, fragile, no longer a threat. He let the emperor believe that the great general had diminished, that his mind was fading, that his power was gone. And the emperor relaxed. He stopped watching, stopped suspecting, stopped fearing. And in that space, in that quiet, invisible space, Sima Yi was building, strategizing, waiting, preparing. When the moment came, when the emperor was gone and power was shifting, Sima Yi moved, decisively, with precision accumulated over years of silent observation, and he won, not by being louder, not by proving his intelligence, by hiding it, until hiding it was no longer necessary. This is the lesson. When a fool holds power above you, do not fight him. Feed his ego. Give him the performance of compliance. Let him believe he is in control. And use the time he wastes preening and performing to build your own sovereign position. The goal is not to defeat him in the moment. The goal is to outlast him. Intelligent men think in years. Fools think in minutes. That difference alone is your greatest advantage. The cold truth. You cannot fix them. This is the part that most men resist, because most intelligent men have this flaw, this deeply embedded, costly flaw. They believe they can change people. They believe that if they explain clearly enough, if they find the right angle, if they show the fool patiently and precisely exactly where his thinking is broken, the fool will see it. He will have a moment of clarity, of humility, of genuine growth. He will say, "You were right. I understand now." And the intelligent man waits for that moment. He keeps trying, he keeps explaining, he keeps hoping. Schopenhauer was ruthless about this. He said, "The assumption that animals are without rights, and the illusion that our treatment of them has no moral significance, is a positively outrageous example of Western crudity and barbarity." He was a man who saw human nature with absolute clarity, and what he saw was not comforting. Most people, he argued, are not capable of genuine reason, not because they are evil, not because they choose to be ignorant, but because their cognitive architecture was not built for it. Just as you cannot teach a man born without sight to see colors through explanation, you cannot reason a man into rationality if rationality was never his foundation. The fool is not broken. He is simply designed differently. And your attempts to fix him are not helping him. They are destroying you. Every time you tried to elevate someone who wasn't ready, you pulled yourself down. You spent patience you didn't have. You offered clarity that was rejected. You gave energy that was consumed. And you were left smaller, more tired, more bitter. Psychological realization, the real price of engagement. You need to hear this clearly. The intelligent man's greatest enemy is not external stupidity. It is his own need to be understood. Read that again. The need to be understood, the need to explain yourself, the need to have your intelligence recognized, the need to have the other person, even the fool, look at you and see you clearly. That need is the leash around your throat, because here is the truth. Fools do not see you. They cannot. Their perception is filtered through ego, fear, and insecurity. They look at you and see a threat, or they look at you and see irrelevance. Nothing in between. They are not capable of the nuanced observation required to recognize genuine intelligence when it operates quietly. They recognize noise, they recognize aggression, they recognize performance, but quiet power, controlled, sovereign, unshakable power, that confuses them. And confusion in a fool becomes hostility. So stop seeking recognition from those incapable of giving it. The sculptor does not ask the stone what it thinks of his hands. He simply carves. You are the sculptor. Start acting like it. Emotional detachment, the practice of sovereign observation. There is a practice, not a theory, not a philosophy, a practice, something you must do deliberately every single day. Schopenhauer called it will denial in its extreme form. Modern psychology calls it emotional detachment. I call it becoming the observer. Here's what it means. When you are in a situation with a fool, when the noise is rising, when the irrationality is pressing against you, you step outside yourself, not physically, mentally. You watch yourself in the situation the way a director watches an actor on set, from a distance, with curiosity, without the full weight of ego attached. You observe, there is a man who is angry and wrong. He is performing his certainty. He wants my reaction. He is feeding on the possibility of my disruption. And then you think, I will not give it to him. Not as a strategy in that moment, not as a tactic, as a decision, a sovereign, deliberate, unshakable decision. And something extraordinary happens when you make this decision consistently. You stop being moved by things that used to destabilize you. The criticism that used to sting stops stinging. The dismissal that used to wound becomes data. The fool who used to drain you becomes irrelevant. Not because you've suppressed your emotions, because you've redirected them. Every emotion that used to flow outward, toward the argument, toward the fool, toward the pointless conflict, now flows inward, toward focus, toward building, toward becoming. That is not coldness, that is conservation. The death of the old self. Let me tell you what you are becoming. You are becoming the man who does not need to prove himself in every room he enters. The man who moves through environments, chaotic, irrational, loud environments, and remains untouched, not detached in a broken way, not cold in an empty way, sovereign. There is a difference between a man who cannot feel and a man who chooses when to feel. The old version of you, the one you are leaving behind, he needed the fool to be wrong out loud. He needed the room to see it. He needed validation that he was smarter. That man is dying, and what is rising in his place is something the fool cannot understand, cannot threaten, cannot reach, a man who has stopped performing his intelligence, who no longer needs the argument to end in his favor visibly, who measures victory not by who looked right in the moment, but by who built more, who moved further, who became more. The fool argues, you build, the fool performs, you prepare. The fool needs the room, you are beyond the room. The final doctrine. This is the doctrine. Write it somewhere you will see it. First, you do not debate with fools. You acknowledge, you redirect, you disengage, not with contempt, with complete sovereign indifference. Second, when fools hold power above you, you wear the mask. You feed the ego. You appear small while you grow enormous. You move when the time is right, not a moment before. Third, you stop trying to fix what cannot be fixed. You stop explaining what cannot be understood. You stop waiting for recognition from those incapable of recognizing. You build your world, quietly, consistently, with or without their awareness. Fourth, and this is the one that changes everything, you stop needing to win where it doesn't count. That is power. Not the performance of power, not the noise of power, the architecture of it, built in silence, delivered in results, visible to everyone, even the fools, especially the fools. You are not here by accident. You've spent too long letting the wrong people cost you the right future. That ends here, not tomorrow. Now, if this reached you, if something in this video struck something real, drop one word in the comments. Observer. That word is your signal. To yourself. To every man watching this who has decided to stop bleeding for fools and start building for himself. Like this video. Not because you have to, because it is the information that the wrong people never wanted you to have. And if you are ready, if you are genuinely ready to go deeper into this transformation, subscribe. Because what comes next is for the ones who stayed, the ones who are ready to become untouchable.